Hello, AP Art History Class of 2019-20. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody is staying healthy, safe, and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, speaking of doing what they're supposed to be doing, let's talk about the new AP Art History exam, looking in to what's changing in 2020. So, your AP Art History exam is going to take place May 15th at noon. That's Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a very extenuating circumstance, you can rally to get your exam moved to June 3rd, which is around 3-4 weeks later, at 12. And you must let your AP coordinator know, your principal, your AP teacher, and that's only if you have a very extenuating circumstance. So some basics. Your exam is only going to be 45 minutes long. You're going to have 2 questions, and the entire thing is open book, open notes. So if you want to have your Barron's book, all the notes you've taken throughout the year, that's fair game, so long as you don't have your phone, anything electronic, something like that. Those are not fair game. So let's talk about your actual questions that you're going to have to answer this year. Question 1. This is going to be a 30-minute essay question based on FRQ1 from previous exams. So you're going to have 30 minutes to write. This is wrong. So this is 30 minutes to write, with 5 minutes to upload once you're done. And then you're gonna have your one question focus on one single theme. So could be the depiction of the Virgin Mary, could be sacred spaces, could be power and authority, anything like that, and 3 to 4 works. So you're gonna have one work given to you and then one work that you can choose from, and you'll see in the next slide what that might look like. And this question is gonna be worth 2/3 of your total exam score. And it's gonna look something vaguely similar to this. So we're having a suggested time of 30 minutes. This is your given image. So this is the Virgin Mary Theotokos. And then on the bottom, you have the 3 images that you are given. And then the theme here is the depiction of the Virgin Mary in art. Next, this second question is going to be based on FRQ 6 from the previous exam. This is a 15-minute essay question. Again, your allotted time is 15 minutes with 5 minutes to upload. And then this is likely going to only touch on one work. So your entire exam, you're only going to be writing on 3 works of the entire 160 that are in units 1 through 6. So this question is going to call upon your ability to connect a work of art to a specific style, tradition, or practice in art history. This is known as continuity and change over time. So could be looking at how different artists use brush strokes over a large period of time, different things like that. And this question is going to be worth the remaining 1/3 of your score, and it's going to look something similar to this. So this question is asking you about Ingres' Le Grand Odalisque, and it's really focusing on how the female nude has changed or will change throughout time and history. So going back from the totalic of female figures in ancient prehistory, going to the birth of Venus, then going to Venus of Urbino, then moving on to here, Le Grand Odalisque, and then finishing off with something like Olympia. So different depictions, and that's what this question is going to be asking you about. So this is a depiction. It could be a style, it could be a tradition, could be something, anything like that. Moving on, we're going to go into how to write a good 30-minute essay question. And this is going to be on based on the new essays. So question 1, comparison. Question 2, continuity and change over time. So the first one we're going to look at is the example I gave you. So this work, as you should know, is the Virgin Mary Theotokos. And right here, since we're going to start, I'm going to put our timer on. And once it hits 30 minutes, we're going to stop. We're going to move on to our next 30-minute or our next 15-minute essay. So we really have to rush through this. We're going to give ourselves 5 minutes to plan and then 25 minutes to write. So this is the Virgin Mary Theotokos. And here is our question. So given that we only have 5 minutes, we're going to read through this at least once and then take some notes and then start writing. So the work shown is the Virgin Mary, Theotokos, and Child between Saints George and Theodore. The work was intended to function as a devotional object. Part 1. Select and completely identify another work. We'll underline that or we'll bold that. Another work depicting the Virgin Mary that was intended to function as a devotional object. You may select a work from the list below or any relevant work from early Europe and colonial America, circa 200 to 1750. Part 2. For each work, use specific visual evidence to describe how the Virgin Mary is being depicted. We'll underline visual evidence. Ooh, my bad. We will underline visual evidence. And then we'll underline how the Virgin Mary is being depicted. Part 3. Explain one difference in how the subject of the Virgin Mary is represented in the 2 works. So have the subject of the Virgin Mary is depicted in the two works. Part 3, explain at least one difference. We'll underline that. At least one difference in how the two works were intended to function as devotional objects. Intended to function as devotional objects, we'll underline that. And then use relevant context, use relevant contextual evidence about both works to support your explanation. Contextual evidence, we'll underline that. And then this bottom part is not an actual part, but just some guidelines for you. When identifying the work that you select, you should try to include all of the following identifiers: title or designation, name of artist and or cultural origin, date of creation, and materials. You will earn credit for the identification if you provide at least 2 accurate identifiers, but you will not be penalized if you add any additional identifiers, and if any of the additional identifiers you add are inaccurate. If you select a work from the list below, you must include at least 2 accurate identifiers beyond those that are given. So let's see, we have the Annunciation Triptych from Northern Renaissance, we have the Rotten Pieta from Gothic, and then we have the Virgin Guadalupe from Art of the Americas. I personally know the most about the Rotten Pieta, so we're going to do that one. So let's get these other 2 out of the way, and we're just going to focus on the Rotten Pieta. So what are some things that we know? So the Virgin Mary Theotokos, Byzantine. What do we know about Byzantine? The 5 G's, 5 G's. God, glory, gold. I think it was 3 G's actually. 3 G's, God's glory and gold. Byzantine. So what do we know about Gothic? Gothic. What else? Mourning, suffering. Post-crucifixion. I really don't know how to spell crucifixion. Let's see. C-R-U. Wow, that is so wrong. Oh, well, close enough. All right. So what else do we know about the Virgin Mary Theotokos? So Jesus is a baby, child. Let's look on Mary. She's not looking at the viewer. She has a halo behind her, so she has a halo. Verse. Portrayed as holy. Above humans in that she has a halo. She's higher than humans because she has a halo. She's holy. Whereas our Pieta, human, showing emotion, crying. So big differences. Our regular Mary, or this Mary, is very stoic, very somber, because what does she have to be sad about? Her son is yet to be dead. Her son is still an infant, and she has saints protecting her at all times, at least in this image. So let's move on to our actual essay. We can move this down so that we have our prompt to look on while we're actually writing. So we have yet to reach 5 minutes, so let's get started and use all the time we can. So first part, select and completely identify another work depicting the Virgin Mary that was intended to function as a devotional object. You may select a work from the list below, blah, blah, blah. So how do we want to start this? So we don't actually have to start with saying our identification. We can sort of build it in once we've started our actual essay. So let's start with part 2, using specific visual evidence to describe how the Virgin Mary is depicted. So the Virgin Mary is shown as being frontal, rigid, and holy. Holy, given her facial expression and golden halo behind her. Depicting her golden halo behind her head, giving her holy qualities that elevate her above the rest of Byzantine society, and it's not giving me the autocorrect option. All right, let's make this double space. You know, I don't think it really matters. All right, so and let's talk about the Rotten Pieta. So the Rotten Pieta created in the 14th century. If it's ancient, like if it's not ancient, if it's older like this and it was made, say, 1300, and you say 14th century, so you just cover all your bases, and you know it was made between 1300 and 1399, and you say 14th century and you're a little broad, that's okay. They'll give you the points for it, so long as you're in your range. And even if it's like prehistory, they'll give it to you within a couple of millennia, within a couple of centuries. Yeah, because it is difficult to memorize 250 different dates to 250 different works of art. So they will give you a little bit of leeway. Just make sure that do the best that you can and try to be as accurate as you can. So the Rotten Pieta, created in the 14th century, sculpted from wood that was then painted, depicts the Virgin Mary as a grieving mother mourning the death of her son Jesus, who had previously been crucified, who had recently been crucified. She is shown as let's make a whole new sentence. She is shown bowing her head in sorrow. She's shown bowing her head in sorrow with a mournful expression, holding her dead son. Okay, so good so far. We've checked this part off. So let's put an X right there. Got that one. Boom, we got that one. Let's see what else. Explain one difference in how the subject of the Virgin Mary is depicted in the two works. Let's see. In the Virgin Mary Theotokos, she is being depicted as having no emotion, with a stoic expression, looking to the right of the viewer, whereas Rotten Pieta is shown as having an overflow of emotion after her son's death. Let's see, did we answer that? Explain one difference in how the subject of the Virgin Mary is depicted. Okay, I'd say that we have that. In the Virgin Mary Theotokos, she's being depicted as having no emotion, with a stoic expression, looking to the right of the viewer, whereas Rotten Pieta is shown as having an overflow of emotion after her son's death, crying, and crying and mourning. Let's see, what else? So I'd say we've got that. Check. All right, we're at 10 minutes and almost 45 seconds, and we've gotten 3 out of the 4 parts to this essay. I think we're doing a pretty good job. So explain at least one difference in how the two works were intended to function as devotional objects. Use relevant contextual evidence about both the works to support your answer. All right. So what we should know about these two works is our Rotten Pieta was meant for individual worship. It was meant to be placed in a house or a small community so that people could reflect and just be in touch with their emotions one-on-one. with this devotional image, whereas Theotokos, it was meant to be placed in a monastery with monks and other highly religious people. So you're meant to be able to see this with your religious brethren and have a profound experience with it, or just worship it as you normally would. So let's read this part one more time to explain at least one difference in how the two works are intended to function as devotional objects. So the Gothic work button Pieta was meant to be placed in a home for personal / private worship, and was not in a area where many could see or worship it at once. The Virgin Mary Theotokos was meant to be placed in a monastery for monks to worship. So we've gotten that point. So let's see. We've gotten all our points so far. We've done this. So let's read what we have back and see what else we need to add to make it a proper 30-minute essay question. So the Virgin Mary Theotokos is shown as being frontal, rigid, and holy, given her facial expression and golden halo behind her head, giving her holy qualities that elevate her above the rest of Byzantine society. The Rotten Pieta, created in the 14th century, sculpted from wood that was then painted. Let's see, we'll comma there. Move that comma. That was then painted depicts the Virgin Mary as a grieving mother, mourning the death of her son Jesus, who had previously been crucified. She's shown bowing her head in sorrow with a mournful expression, showing her dead son, holding her dead son. In the Virgin Mary Theotokos, she's being depicted as having no emotion with a stoic expression, looking to the right of the viewer, whereas Rotten Pieta is shown as having an overflow of emotion after her son's death, crying and mourning. The Gothic work Rotten Pieta was meant to be placed in a home for private personal worship. It was not meant to be placed in a communal area where many could see / worship it at once. The Virgin Mary Theotokos was meant to be placed in a monastery for monks to worship. Let's see. So what we have gets us all the points, but we know that a 30-minute essay question should reach around 1.5 pages. So let's double space that. So let's add some fluff. So let's go back to our notes and see what else we have. So we can totally touch on 3Gs and how they were important to Byzantine society. We got mourning, check. We got Gothic, check. Jesus and child, yeah. We got these parts, cool. So let's find a place where we can squeeze in our little bit of context. So blah, 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 Byzantine society. So let's move in the sentence right here. Byzantine society was characterized by importance Christianity, especially in artwork, art was created in this period, contained a large amount of gold, which added to the holiness. Oh, I don't know if that's how you spell holiness, but that's what we're gonna go with. Which added to the holiness of the scenes. Which added to the holiness of the scenes. So there we have a little bit of context, and it just stretches this essay out a little bit more. So let's put this on an actual page and see what this looks like. So, okay, so let's have our goal to make this, stretch this out to a full page. So what else can we add? So we had a little bit of Byzantine society. What else do we know about the work? So we could talk about how this one shows the depiction of saints and how our Rotten Quieto, we don't have an image, does not, and how it's just a standalone piece without saints and without anyone else in the Pieta. All right, so where's a good place to add this little extra piece of content? Well, we're talking about monks here, so why don't we add that right to the end of our essay that we have so far. So, was meant to be placed in a monastery for monks to worship. Let's see. Holy figures, such as the saints George and Theodore, depicted in the Virgin Mary Theotokos, add to the religious significance, because saints play, let's fix the spelling, because saints, I don't know why there's a comma there, because saints play a vital role in Christian religion, acting as interpreters of the Bible, helping to bridge the connection between God, Jesus, and their worshipers. So a little bit extra fluff we added there on the Christian religion. Let's see, what else can we touch on just to stretch this out a little bit more. And it's really important that you show what you know about this period. Show what you know about the time. Let's see. So let's talk about what the addition of these saints adds to the Virgin Mary. So the addition of the saints. Let's see. The saints in the saints in the work are there to protect Mary and her child. It's capitalized Mary. Are meant to protect Mary and her child. However, in the Pieta, there are no saints or holy figures, just Mary and her dead son. The omission of, let's see, I'm pretty sure omission is a word, so we'll look that up later. The omission of other figures, the omission of saints and other holy figures. There we go. The omission of saints or other holy figures helps amplify the sorrow that the piece exudes. Which in turn helps worshipers more deeply connect themselves to the work. So we have a full page. Let's read it out. The Virgin Mary Theotokos. Here, I'll control F. Mary. And I'm doing this just to make sure that everything is capitalized, just to be grammatically correct. While I'm doing this, the Virgin Mary Theotokos is shown as being frontal, rigid, and holy, given her facial expression and golden halo. Oops. Given her golden halo behind her, giving her holy qualities that elevate her above the rest of Byzantine society. Byzantine society is characterized by the importance of Christianity, especially in artwork. This art was created during a period. The art that was, The art that was created during this period contained a large amount of gold, which added to the holiness of the scenes. The Rotten Pieta, created in the 14th century, sculpted from wood, then painted, depicts the Virgin Mary as a grieving mother, mourning the death of her son Jesus, who had previously been crucified. She is shown bowing her head in sorrow, with a mournful expression, holding her dead son. In the Virgin Mary Theotokos, she's being depicted as having no emotion, with a stoic expression, looking to the right of the viewer, whereas Rotten Pieta is shown as having an overflow of emotion after her son's death, crying and mourning. The Gothic work Rotten Pieta was meant to be placed in a home for personal/private worship and was not meant to be placed in communal areas where many could see/worship it at the same time. The Virgin Mary Theotokos was meant to be placed in a monastery for monks to worship. Holy figures such as Saints George and Theodore depicted in the Virgin Mary Theotokos add to the religious significance because saints play a vital role in the Christian religion, acting as interpreters of the Bible, helping to bridge the connection between God, Jesus, and their worshippers. The saints in the work are there to protect Mary and her child. However, in Rotten Pieta, there are no saints or other holy figures, just Mary and her son and her dead son. The omission of the saints or other holy figures helps amplify the sorrow that the piece exudes, which in turn helps worshipers more deeply connect themselves to the work. So, the question: have we gotten this question? Have we gotten this point? Yes. Have we gotten this point? Yes. Have we gotten this point? Yes. And did we explain at least one difference in how the two works were intended to function as devotional objects? Yes. Did we add a little extra just to make sure that our readers knew that we knew what we were talking about? Yes. Is this a 7 out of 7? Or very close to? I'd argue so. So that was our 30-minute essay. Now let's move on to our 15-minute essay. So your second question that you're going to have to answer is continuity and change over time. So let's pause this. Let's wait for it to get to 24. Okay. So, and we'll start. So once it hits 39 minutes, we're done. So, Le Grand Odalisque by Jean Ingres, completed in 1814, circa 1814, Common Era, and first exhibited at the Paris Salon in 1819, Common Era. So, describe at least two visual characteristics of Ingres' representation of the female form. We'll bold that. Using specific visual evidence, explain how La Grande Odalisque demonstrates an established traditions in the representation of the female nude. Using specific visual evidence, explain how the Grande Odalisque demonstrates changes from established traditions in the representation of the female nude. Using specific contextual evidence, explain why Ingres deviated from the established traditions in his representation of the female nude. So we'll highlight why Ingres deviated. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so let's use our next minute to just jot down some notes. So what do we know? Continue the legacy of the female nude. Continues to like to see the female nude. Okay. So this one has Turkish influences with the fan here, the jewelry, the tapestry, and the turban that she's wearing. She is reclining. She is fully nude. What else? She is, let's see, her body is turned, and her face is towards the audience. Okay. All right, so we got down some quick notes. Let's move those. And let's start our essay. Remember, this should be around 3 to 3/4 of a page. So let's get to it. So describe at least one visual characteristic of Ingres's representation of the female form. So Jean Ingres' depiction of the female form in his work, La Grande Odalisque, shows the subject as reclining. Shows the subject as reclining, which is a continuation of the reclining female nude tradition that began in the 14th century. So remember, Titian sort of started this reclining female nude when he made his work, Venus of Urbino. Remember that work. Lots of very vivid detail with the oil paint. He was really able to make Venus you could almost know what she felt like because he depicted her in such a realistic way. Now, would I say this is realistic? No, I'd say this is more idealized. So we have about 12 more minutes left. We got this first part, check. Okay, so using specific visual evidence, explain how La Grande Odalisque demonstrates established traditions of the female nude. So, as in past centuries and past works of art depicting the female form. Wow, that was just terrible. Depicting the female form, especially the female nude form, in past centuries and past works of art depicting the female form, especially the female nude form. Let's see. There is a. Let's see there. Oh, you know what? My bad. I missed a part. We did not get this full point because I only put one visual characteristic. So let's go back. La Grande Odalisque, Odalisque. Let's see, La Grande Odalisque is also having an elongated form with a stretched torso and elongated arms and legs. Okay, so that is our second part, and that is our 2 points right there. So, as in past centuries and past works of art depicting the female form, especially the female nude, there is a tradition of female line on a surface such as a bed or divan, which is just a fancy word for like a think of like a therapist couch, something like that. Reclining on a surface such as a bed or divan, which is continued in this work, seeing as the subject is reclining on a surface with her back to the audience, AUDIANCE. Let's see. So we use specific visual evidence explaining how the ground release demonstrates established traditions. Okay. Check. Okay. Using specific visual evidence to explain how the ground release demonstrates a change from established traditions. So this work makes a deviation from the established traditions of the depiction of the female form because let's see, because established from the established tradition of the female form, because subject is shown as having an wow, that's horrible spelling. I'm very sorry for the spelling. As having an elongated form with a stretched torso, reminiscent of the Marinist era of art history, characterized by twisted and disproportional forms. Okay, we got the deviation. Okay, so we have 7 minutes left. So using contextual evidence, explain why Angra deviated from the established traditions of his representation of the female nude. So we know that this was made during the not Romanesque. This was made during the Romantic era. So Romanticism. So we're having lots of social commentary, and so think of "And There's Nothing to Be Done" and "The Liberty Leading the People." Lots of different depictions of what's really going on in the world. This one isn't so upfront, but it's showing that there is a rest of the world because we're having Angra show these Turkish influences, this Turkish turban, this Turkish fan, these Turkish drapes, Turkish drapes. So we can talk about that. So using specific contextual evidence, explain why Angra deviated from established traditions of the female nude. So Angra the subject as having Turkish, depicted the subject with a Turkish turban, fan, and drapery. This was meant to bring light to other cultures during the Romantic. Fix that. During the Romantic era, and make social commentary on what cultures should be depicted in contemporary art. So let's double space that and see what it looks like on a page all by itself. Okay, so move that down. So we've got a good half a page, and we have a good less than 5 minutes left. So we've gotten everything else, I'd say. So we got our 2 visual characteristics. We explained how it aligns with established traditions. We explained how it deviated from established traditions. And then we explained how contextually why Angra deviated from the established traditions in the depiction of the female nude. So yeah, we have about half a page. If we add one long, strong sentence, we can wrap this up. So where do we want to put that? What else can we add? What else do we know? Well, reclining, fully nude, bodies turned, Turkish influences, continues the legacy of the female nude. Let's see. So, I mean, we could talk about other influences. So, let's add some context. So the depiction of the female form in art has existed for millennia, with the first known depictions being made over 20,000 years ago in the Tatalico, Mexico. So we have our Tatalico female figures that we're going to talk about, Titalico, Tatalico region of Mexico. This tradition later morphed into a more recognizable image during the Renaissance in Italy during the 15th and 16th centuries. I'm very sorry. It's much more difficult than you would think it is to type and talk at the same time. During the 15th and 16th centuries, where artists like Titian created the established the traditions we know now. Let's see, so, nope, that needs to be autocorrected. T-R-A-D-I-T-O-N, only one N. All right, so that brought us to our 3/4 of a page. So the depiction of the female form in art has existed for millennia, with the first known depiction being made over 20,000 years ago in the Tatalico region of Mexico. This tradition later morphed into a more recognizable image during the Renaissance in Italy during the 15th and 16th centuries, where artists like Titian established the tradition we know now. Jean Angra depicts Jean Angra's depiction of the female form in his work La Grande Odalisque shows the subject as reclining, which is a continuation of the reclining female nude tradition that began in the 14th century. Let's change that to 15th, because that was when the Italian Renaissance was. La Grande Odalisque is also depicted as having an elongated form with a stretched torso, elongated arms and legs. As in past centuries and past works of art depicting the female form, especially the female nude form, there's a tradition of having the female nude reclining on a surface such as a bed or divan, which is continued in this work, seeing as the subject is lying on a surface with her back to the audience. This work makes a deviation from the established traditions of the female form, because the subject is shown as having an elongated form with a stretched torso, reminiscent of the Mannerist era of art history, characterized by twisted and disproportional forms. Angra depicts the subject with a Turkish fan, turban, and drapery. This was meant to bring light to other cultures during the Romantic era, and meant to make a social commentary on what cultures should be depicted in contemporary art. Well, that's all 5 points. And remember, your 30-minute essay that we did is going to be worth 7 points no matter what, and this one is going to be worth 5. So I'd say we got at least 4 out of 5, and I'd say that we got all 5 out of 5. So these were taken from the 2017 AP Art History exam, and I urge you to go back into 2016, 18, and 19 and find your continuity and change question and find your comparison question. Do those for yourself and start to just do a lot of practice, because that's what you're going to need. You're going to need a lot of practice for this exam. And you want to make sure that you're ready, you know what you're talking about, and it's just all about how you manage your time. So we started here. We finished our 30-minute essay in 23 minutes. We took our first 5 minutes just to plan it out, think it out. But if you'll see and you'll watch back and you'll remember when we were writing it, we had no barons, we had nothing open, but we used what we saw in this image. So we used what we were directly looking at with the image that was given. So we saw that Mary had this halo. We saw that her face was almost stoic. We saw that these two men to her side were guarding her. And we knew, because we were given the name, that these are Saints George and Theodore, and we were able to pull them into our essay. So use what you're given to make this essay yours, and use everything that you know, use everything that you're given to make sure that you write a cohesive essay. Make sure you hit that page and a half, even though we didn't hear. We got all the points, even though we didn't hit a page and a half, but that should be your goal. We hit our 3/4 of a page, we got all 5 points, and we did it in under 15 minutes. So I urge you all to take the first 3 to 5 minutes, plan the essay out, write some things that you know, because when you go back and you're starting to edit, because you will need to edit just a little bit, just to make sure that your spelling's correct, your grammar's correct, everything's correct. So when you're going back, you can look at these notes and say, okay, oh, I didn't talk about how Jesus is a child. I didn't talk about the suffering in Pieta. So you can go back and make sure that you hit everything. So I hope this was helpful. And if you need anything else, put it in the comments, shoot me an email, anything you want. And I hope everyone stays safe and stays healthy. And everyone, good luck on this exam.